go ahead and begin with a quick introduction. My name is Ahmed Mohammed. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition at Harvard Medical School in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm also one of the members of the PEEF organization. And forgive me, as I'm speaking today, I'll be admitting people into the room. It looks like I will need to be admitting folks into today's conversation as well. So just to give you a quick overview of what PEEF is and what the PEEF Virtual Talk is. Again, I would like to welcome everyone to the PEEF Virtual Talk. PEEF Virtual Talk is a program offered by the People Expertise and Excellence Foundation, PEEF as an acronym. PEEF is a nonprofit organization composed of esteemed professionals from both public and private sectors. It is dedicated to addressing skills development challenges in Nigeria and Africa and ensuring a robust human capacity across various professions. PEEF's key objectives are to share sector-specific knowledge and best practices, address development challenges, and co-create practical solutions to improve the quality of life in Nigeria and Africa, and foster a strong professional and sustainable national development. The PVT session, which you're in today, is usually led by subject matter experts. These are interactive sessions that cover various sectors of the broader economy and offer conversations and solutions to current challenges. So that's just a brief overview of PEEF and the PVT. If you're interested in learning more about PEEF and how to join us, please visit our website at www.peef.ng. You'll find a lot of great information in there, and we do look forward to hopefully attracting your interest in the organization and what we do, and hopefully we can also attract you to join us as members. These PVT sessions are free to all members and to all non-members, so folks are free to participate. Again, we do cover a variety of topics, so very interesting. Today's topic, certainly one of the key interesting ones as well. So as it's 12:04, I am going to once again welcome everyone to today's PVT. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this PVT session today on a really key and almost significant topic to Nigeria and indeed the broader global community. This afternoon, we will explore the connection between food security, national development, and social inclusion to understand their pivotal role in shaping Nigeria's future. Nigeria is a nation of rich cultural heritage and abundant natural resources, and stands at a critical juncture in its journey towards sustainable development. Yet, amid the backdrop of insurgency, and climate change, our country, Nigeria, grapples with formidable challenges, chief among them being the pervasive issue of food security. Our distinguished Dr. Emeka Okwengu, a distinguished expert and consultant in agricultural economics and development, would lead us today through a conversation around the multifaceted dimension of food security challenge. He holds a BSc, MIE, and a PhD from universities in Nigeria, the State University of New York, and the ITTL Doctoral Research Institute in the United States of America. Dr. Okwengu's expertise extends across various sectors where he has made significant contributions to national and international development initiatives. Throughout his career, he has been engaged by prominent institutions such as the World Bank, the United Nations, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and various state government and consultancy projects, ranging from economic corridor development to sustainable resource management. He was a former lead consultant to the United Nations Food Security and Socio-Economic Development on the review of the United Nations Sustainable Partnership Development Framework, and a consultant to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture on Development and National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Plan. With his knowledge and experience, he continues to play a pivotal role in shaping policies and strategies for inclusive and sustainable development in Nigeria and beyond. Today, he will cover areas such as the intersection of food insecurity, with broader issues such as national development and social inclusion, most pressing challenges and priorities, the pivotal role of agriculture in Nigeria's economy amidst environmental and climate change concerns, enhancing social inclusion for marginalized communities, and government's role in tackling food security challenges. Other areas we may cover if we have some time include the integration of technologies in agricultural practices, improving infrastructure and investment in the farm sector, strengthening agricultural education and extension services, and the importance of international cooperation. So as you can see, we do have a pretty packed day today, and we're looking forward to this conversation. So without further ado, I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming Dr. Emeka Okengu to today's PVT, and we look forward to our conversation today. I'll let Dr. Emeka say a few words, and then we'll get right into it.
Thank you most kindly, Ahmed. Good to see you eventually. At least see your face. You've been speaking. To let you guys know, I've been going forward and back with Ahmed. We decided, or I insisted that this had to be a conversation, because when you're talking about PEEF, I've gone to take a little look into the PEEF structure and those who participate in PEEF, and I find that you're all expert in subject areas or subject experts in your various areas. And one of the worst things you want to do is to teach those who you should learn from. So what we're going to be doing is to be doing a lot of unlearning, sharing thoughts, and like Ahmed had said, we're going to be having 1 hour of everybody participating one way or the other in this conversation, because we're talking about very important things. Ahmed had said Nigeria a rich nation. I cringed when he said so. This is going to be the first person I'm going to be asking everybody in the room. Are we a rich nation? Do we have abundant natural resources? Do we have these skill sets that can be able to make us a nation? If we do, how come, in the food security index measured against 113 countries, our country, Nigeria, is 107? How come? Okay, I mean, if we're saying we're rich and we're not able to meet the basic, indicators for food security, then something is really wrong. And Ahmed has said, okay, climate change, food security, national development, social inclusion, and the missing links. Now, question will be, this is an intro, and this is what I want everybody to start wrapping our heads around. Are there any links that were missing? Or do we need to probably identify those links and begin to now, see if we need to do some joining? It's going to be 1 hour of me asking questions, leading questions, prodding everybody on, taking your own questions, sharing my experiences and my knowledge. And then by the end of the day, getting everybody in this room, I'll tell you what my target will be, that all of us become advocates of food security, national development, and social inclusion. And I can assure you, I will tell you the last for the first. We are food insecure. We are not developing organically. We definitely do not have social inclusion, but we can achieve it. And it's going to be us in this room telling ourselves some very, very hard, bittersweet truths, okay, of how we can be able to get our country to work again. And it's a privilege to be here. I feel most honored. And thank you, Ahmed, for your kind introduction again. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to get us started with at least one question, and then we can get into it. I just want to remind those who are joining us once again. My name is Ahmed Mohammed, Director of Talent Acquisition at Harvard Medical School in Boston. I'll be facilitating this conversation, but we do expect that the audience would also have some questions, or type in your question in the chat box as well. So to get us going, Doctor, can you start by sharing how you see the intersection of food insecurity with the broader issues such as national development and social inclusion in Nigeria, particularly in the light of the recent challenges that the country is facing?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we need to draw the difference between a nation and a state. So let's know the one we're operating in. Because when you're talking about national security, you're talking about a country. And if you're talking about food security, you're talking about the ability, of any given enclave, that is termed to be a nation state to be able to feed itself. And then when you're talking about social inclusion, it means that everybody, in that enclave you call a country, okay, feels he's part of our country. Well, I can tell you this for certain, and I'm going to start by saying that a hungry man is an angry man. It's my very popular term, and an angry man is a madman. If we have a lot of Nigerians that are hungry, then it simply means we have a lot of mad people walking the streets. A lot of angry, mad, sane people. And there is no way you can have mad, sane people walking the streets and you're talking about national development. So the first that happens is that the moment you have people that are food insecure, you have people that are disconnected, from that, geopolitics or space that you call your enclave or habitation. And if you're talking about national development, a lot of people will tie national development to physical infrastructure. They think that you're developed when, you have roads, you have bridges, you have hospitals, you have that, you have that. That's not development, that is functional. Okay, in economics, you can actually have, growth without development and development without growth. So if you're going to be having development that is inclusive, then you need to be able to now understand the full value process of development. And if you're talking about your natural resources, which we talked about, the difference between natural resources and products that can get competitive in the international market or can earn you a place in what they call the politics of international economic relations is the technologies or the value you add to those natural resources, and then be able to now take them into the market. Ahmed, I'll come to you. I'm quite enthused. I'm a little bit, amazed that you from a medical, your where you work is actually should not close this conversation for me. This is you, director of a medical system, medical school that has very proven, very clear rules of engagement, and you have a program, for talent acquisition. Do you know what that means? What it simply means is that as much as we identify that there's this, basics needs that you must have to be able to engage, there is still that need for a program to be able to harness talents. Now, this is the beginning of you being able to now aggregate, what you call your right place, what you call your right capital. And the first and the most important capital any nation wants to build on is human capital. And then when we're talking about food, it's also important that people do not see food as what we eat in Nigeria. Because 80% of the times, what we're just reading in is all carbohydrates all our lives, all protein all our lives. We must be able to link food to nutrition. And if you're not able to link food to nutrition, then you might not be part of that global, system, that talks about those nutritional values that you need, those calories that you need every day for you to be able to grow people who are intelligent. And you see, it is not only malnutrition, that's food occasions. You also now, this is where you might be able to help me, Ahmed, the impact of food on mental development. And I think one of the greatest, inputs or medicines you can be able to build or use in building, both your mental, physical body is food. And it's just not food, swallowing all carbohydrates. It is food that is nutritionally based. So in one word, I hope I'm able to connect this. You cannot talk about social inclusion, when you have, the kind of widespread, the very few rich, and the extremely poor that we have in Nigeria. So we have a lot of social, disaggregation. It's bad. You cannot also now have national development, in whatever guise you want to put it, when you have a country that is very food insecure. I mean, at the last count today, if you look at the import bill of Nigeria for foods, you'll be shocked that over 80% of what we consume, what we have in our strategic reserves, are even imported. And I'm talking about grains. Okay, so when the president said release 130,000 metric tons of food, there was nothing in those silos because either they had been looted or they hadn't been replaced because, of course, of the logistics, the supply disruptions that you have, because of all the whole crisis we have globally now, the Ukrainian, Russian brouhaha. And it's important I put this in. And please, if you need to interrupt me in the course of this conversation, it becomes very important. Ukraine is a country of interest. Now, Ukraine is sitting on less than 56,000 hectares of land, and they are major. Okay, they're a very major player in the global grain and supply chain. Now, Niger State, a state in Nigeria that has 4 dams, is sitting on about 78 million hectares of land. And the foods that we're importing from Ukraine is actually going to Niger State, or some of it is going to Niger State. And this is where you have, probably most of the poorest people. It's become a belt for criminality and criminals. And I'm not talking about all the other resources that they have. So what is power without control? And this is why I cringed when you talked about abandoned natural resources. If they are abundant and you can't touch them, then you don't have them.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. So, I mean, obviously there are so many different challenges that we can touch upon, and you mentioned a few of them here today. What would you, access to food is not just about filling the stomach, right? It's not, it goes beyond that. Food impacts the economy, it impacts the lives of people around us as well. What would you, given these multifaceted challenges that we see all around us with regards to food security and insecurity, what would you consider the most pressing in terms of addressing food security and fostering national development in Nigeria today? And why would you consider this the most pressing?
The absence of the proper administrative and operational structures. That is the most pressing. Now, I tell you why I say so. You might be very surprised that everything we need to surpass America and any other country that is self-sufficient in food production exists within our formal structures. But the challenge, Ahmed, is that there's no synergy, there's no framework, there's no meeting point. Now, I'll give you a typical example. You have a ministry they call the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. And you have another ministry they call the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. And in the ministry, under the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, you have 4 key central research institutes. One is FIRO, that is located in Lagos, that has to do with foods. The other one is RAMDC, the Raw Materials Research Development Council. The other one is NABDA, that has to do with the National Biotechnology Development. And 1 or 2 other ones I'll remember as we go along. But you know what? There is no, and please I stand to be corrected, no relationship between the Raw Materials Research Development Agency, and it's important to look at their budgets because that's where you actually see these relationships, and not at the committee levels. Now, when you look at the budgeting system and you're not able to see the role that NABDA can play in supporting, the programs of the Ministry of Agriculture, then you know that there's a disconnect. So what happens is that all these agencies are fully funded, and by the end of the day, there are no outputs. And when there are outputs, they just become, file matters that are just left there, to gather dust. So the most important thing is that we must be able to create, that operational framework now that begins to now build synergies amongst those who first and foremost should be able to bring in the science and technology needed, for us to take food to where it is. Now, the second, go ahead, sorry.
No,
sorry,
go ahead. No, I was
please.
just wondering. I was wondering because
yes.
you mentioned, when we talked about most pressing, you mentioned administrate the ability to administrate basically this space so that we can have a more effective and efficient process for managing food security issues. Given that you enjoy the interaction of the audience, I was hoping that maybe an audience member can take an opportunity right now to identify maybe some other area that they see as a pressing point of concern in addition to administration. I'll give.
No, it's when I'm talking about administration. I'm not talking about administration because you're not administering yet. You're building the framework. Right. It's only when you build the framework that you can now begin to build, the programs. And it's only when you have your programs that you can talk about administration. So administration. Right. So what I'm trying.
Administration not in the sense of the people, but in the sense of administering this whole network of.
Maybe yes. The word is clustering the network. Yes. By the time you cluster this network, then you have an integrated program where you have the Ministry of Water Resources that has 320 dams that is not of any use to anybody, that is supposed to be supporting our food security systems. Okay, where you have these research institutes that are doing so much research, like the Raw Materials Research Development Center has so much, outputs, patented, studies waiting for either startups or commercialization, but there's no way to fix it. So what are they doing? There's nowhere you are seeing policy meeting business. And you cannot have that handshake except you're able to build, first and foremost, that proper back end that creates the volume that unlocks your value. That's the point I'm trying to make. So if you get that right, then it becomes important. You can now begin to now grow your national volumes. You can now actually say from our 320 dams, we are able as a country to produce 1.8 million, 2.10 million, whatever millions metric tons of fish doing ABCD, supported with fingerlings, with seedlings, with this, with that. We're able to now aggregate this, toutedly 80 million, 70 million, 68 million hectares of arable land. Again, we use words very loosely in Nigeria. When you use the word arable, it connotes that you've done some soil supporting systems, some investigations. Okay, just like when you use the word abundant, it simply means if it's for your solid minerals, you must have done some, depth drilling or some exploration or soil pinting or some trenching. If you have this, Ahmed, then you can now begin to now juxtapose it against the nutritional needs of your population. So when I talk about that being the most important thing, I'm saying it vis-a-vis the terms of data, driving the process.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doctor. Assuming nobody has anything else to add, I did put it in the chat in case folks have other areas they would like to have you speak upon. If not, I would go ahead and ask you another key question. Really around, we know that Nigeria is oil rich, so to speak, but we also know that agriculture itself is significant in Nigeria, despite the oil industry's dominance. How do you envision further leveraging the agricultural sector to drive economic growth and improve food security? Are there any specific strategies that you think that you've observed that are most promising, whether it's currently in Nigeria or in other parts of the world?
Okay, let's take the Malaysian program, the Malaysian story, and the Malaysian palm. There was one time I was part of a study, and we found that almost every palm plantation in Nigeria, had gone to what did they call it, SEC. They had gotten listed. They became PLCs, and strange enough, most of them had their hoods full of oil. Okay. And part of, the key research questions we are looking at, when was the last time we replanted any plantation in Nigeria? And Ahmed, that study showed that we hadn't done any plantation replanting in the past 60 years. So the worry became, how are we now able to fill these holes, okay, with so much oil? And wait for it, my brother. Now, it became more profitable to bring in palm oil in ship holds that were bringing in diesel and fuel than petrol themselves. And this is why, from where you come from, there's an oil they call controller. If you go to buy it in the market, it smells as if it has diesel in it. Now, these were the smuggled oils that they were bringing into Nigeria. Now, remember that sector built a whole economy for the Southeast states, just like cocoa built economy for the Southwest, just like granules built another one. In fact, I say this to people, if you go to Kaduna today, there is no public building that has gone higher than the 10-story building, that is owned by the NDDC or NNDC. Okay, and that building was built from proceeds, from granules. Ditto again for the ACB building in Enugu, no public structure. Ditto for the net building in Ibadan. But today, you find out that because of the link, between research, okay, and business, you don't have any research institute that is doing either seed boosting or seed budding, or seed multiplication on a commercial basis. Now, you don't have anybody replanting. And the two very popular species, of, I think, the tenure, and the super gene of palm, okay, is all from Malaysia. And Malaysia had, value processed, please Google it and see, value processed, there is nothing wasted, from the palm, okay, either producing or mow down. Now, we can go on and on and on and on and on. So if you don't understand the essence of volume being the critical, key to unlocking value, then you will not be able to get it right. Okay, today, for where you had your granite plantations, fortunately you lived in Kano, you now have houses. Okay, you now have roads. And then people say, no, we are actually developing. That's what they call development without growth, because it's not inclusive. And you now have more people being displaced from the land, coming into Kano City to do nothing. Ditto for any other major city in Nigeria. So agriculture and the low understanding of what agriculture can be able to give to us vis-a-vis that low level. Okay, now we're not even talking about food security now. We're talking about cash crops. We're talking about those things that can be able to support, industrial growth. Now, you live in America, Ahmed. One of the most expensive oils you or your wife can ever put on your body is anything that has shea on it, shea butter. Now, Nigeria has the biggest shea belt, okay, in Africa. And I can tell you this, there is no program in Nigeria, I stand to be corrected. I hope government people are here listening to me to challenge this, okay, that is aggregating the shea nuts or shea fruits. So whatever you have going on there is wasted. But this is an industry that's even entered into the food industry, of the United States. A lot of these organic, chocolates you guys eat, are made out of shea butter. And I'm not talking about cocoa. Okay, so if we're talking about oil and you say we are oil rich, again, I disagree with you. You are not oil rich because you don't own the oil anymore. Go and look at the licenses you have signed. Most of them are going to be running for 80 years, 100 years. So what you're doing is that you're just getting rent and royalty. And for the whole oil being produced in Nigeria, I want to put on record of saying that the only part of it Nigeria gets out of the 1.7 million or 2.2 million is about 450,000 barrels a day. And that is not even, available for us to use. And this is why Dangote, who is supposed to be getting 80% or 90% of the oil, is announcing that he's going to be getting his oil from America. He's getting his raw materials from America. So your oil is encumbered. That's what it simply means. So I think we should also be a little bit, careful when we use the word we are oil rich. If we are selling 1.7 million barrels of oil at $80 a day, everybody in Nigeria should be getting $1 million, as salary. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening.
Right.
Okay, 1 million.
And when you think about, when we think about food insecurity, I know there are a lot of these things like you mentioned, and some of other areas that we can get into include things like, farming cows, for instance. We are not even close to the percentage of utilization that we have. We eat meat, and that's pretty much where it stops. Maybe some few leather products, but the things that are happening that could support the economy in terms of just these types of products are huge. But going back to the issue of food itself, right? Like, what do you think? I mean, from a sustainable practice standpoint, I mean, you said earlier, a hungry man is an angry man. How does Nigeria find a way to support sustainable food access to its citizens? Because this is really where the conversation is happening. People are hungry, people are upset, people want to have more access to food, because without that sustenance, they just can't even do many of these things that we want, right?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you mentioned cow or cattle. The livestock economy, if you look at what Nigeria has now, undoubtedly 24 million cattle roaming around aimlessly. If we were to convert that into disposable capital at a first sale value of 200,000 naira, I made your calculator can take it. Okay, now, if you were able to grow a forage program around those 24 million cattle, you'll be requiring on a daily basis in sales 500,000 metric tons of forage to be able to keep those cattle healthy and happy. Now, if you also remember that Botswana has less than 10 million cattle and have become a very major player. In fact, the cattle industry is giving Botswana, a lot of its GDP, contributing a lot to its GDP. What did they do? What they just simply did is what we are refusing to do, okay? To live the old ways of how our parents lived in the dark ages, okay, roaming around, where you had no disturbances, and then being able to aggregate. So point I'm trying to make is that this is all about aggregation. Our farm system is all about aggregation, okay? The moment you are able to aggregate and then build the volumes, okay, that you can now begin to actually unlock your infrastructure. The potato industry in America, where you live, Ahmed, is so stretched that a potato industry, you find out that one of their major outputs will be that they are running a fleet of over 200 or 300, trailers. Now, you find out that they are running, canning businesses that are able to now provide their packaging. You find out that they are running warehousing system that's able to do, their warehousing, just potato. But do you know why this is possible? Some of them are even operating their own private, rail systems, because they no longer have farms. What you have in countries that understand it are no longer even plantations. Everybody is going the way of belts. Now, what you have is the food belt. The potato belt in America extends over 3 or 4 states across America. And by the time they bring in that value and what they get out of it, it becomes a huge industry. It's even supporting their pharmaceutical industry. So we can go on and on and on. But I think, like I said to you, the greatest challenge we have as a country is that we've not been able to remove and move away from the mindset of making agriculture and food production a proper thing. Now, anytime you want to see a farm in Nigeria, you're seeing people carrying baskets, you're seeing people carrying hoes, you're seeing poor people with torn clothes. Now, that's the picture you see. But against where you are living right now, you want to get into a guy's farm, you go to his private wing, and you get into a helicopter or a private plane, and then both of you are flying across these farms. Now, there's no magic to it. The magic is that they are aggregating those back-end inputs that is needed to be able to support common shared infrastructure where they need, to be made or to be developed. they're now, encouraging, proper financing. I mean, for PEEF, I'm sure that you've come across a lot of guys who say to you, anything that is under $50 million, we're not interested. I mean, you want to get funding from foreign investors, and they say to you, how much are you looking for? You say, oh, maybe $500,000. Guy says that it's not my time. Now, when you now start changing $250 million into your currency, and somebody said to you, Ahmed, do you want to sell the whole of Bauchi State? How are we going to be securing this? But this is something you can basically do by being able to aggregate all these inputs that I told you about. Tractors here, sealants here, pesticides here, fertilizers here. So, in one word, we are not a rich nation, not in oil, not in natural resources. But we can unlock the latent potentials of Nigeria, by unlocking these values we can put to our land. And this is where the challenge, is.
So let me ask you this. I mean, it's hard, Doctor, to talk about change at this scale without talking about policies.
Yes.
Right? And obviously, we know, generally speaking, policies usually come from government.
Yes.
From where you are sitting, from your background, from your experience, what specific role do you think government needs to play in addressing this challenge specifically? And are there any specific policy reforms that you are aware of, or initiatives that you would recommend that that Nigeria put in place in order to help support both at the local level, but also at the national level, the ability for Nigeria to become more food secure?
Okay, as consultant to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, when we're doing one of the programs you announced kindly against my name, the National Agricultural Transformation Implementation Plan, I told them to remove the word plan and put the word project. Okay, so that we're able to now make it purely private sector driven. I also said to them that until the day we're able to incorporate, the agri-corp, like I tried to push for, to say, let's have a corporation that will be able to mop up on a lot of the facilities that government has been supporting on ProPol, and then begin to enter into agreements, okay, with subnationals and even those at the local government level, who will now bring in whatever it is they have, their brawn, their human capital, their land into the picture. So that if we are talking about a wheat program in Nigeria, we are talking about a wheat belt, okay, that we start from Maiduguri and, be ending somewhere around Abia State or so. Ditto for every other thing we can grow. And I tell people this, everybody thinks that palm, grows better in the southern part of the country. But it's not true. The best palms grow in the north. And I had tried it, in my resource center, and you can come and see for yourselves. The best cassava grow in the north. Wait for it, Ahmed. The best maize species grow in the north. And there are much more we can even begin to do with the eucalyptus, the moringas, the neems, and all that to be able to support it. So if you're talking about government, we must be able to now identify who government is, okay? Because government is everybody. But if you're talking about now creating this huge conglomerates like we did in the oil sector. And the people who created it because they needed that volume to be able to aggregate everybody. And remember that agriculture also ran like that. At one time, the moment we never ever had the Federal Ministry of Agriculture when the people who were taking, our agricultural goods and services were here. I'm talking about Royal Niger Company. Okay, what they did was that they built, large aggregation centers all over any country, any major city that you want to mention. Kanu, where I'm sure you have a little bit of some institutional memory, grew around, the warehouses of grains. Ibadan, Enugu, there's no major town in Nigeria that did not evolve, out of these, great aggregation centers. And you had, those marketing boards And then what you had, the middlemen, the produce buyers who were all playing these roles. But there was a secret behind all this. The secret was that the first thing they did was that they built research centers that supported whatever they wanted to do. Before they started taking land, you had NIFO in Benin. I mean, those way back in those days, for those of us who are old enough, if you could enter into NIFO and take photographs, you can tell anybody you were in the best part of Europe. Okay, now they built, the tobacco research center in Zaria. And if you remember, Ahmed, if you can recall, you could drive from Zaria up until the point you're getting to the toll gates, and what you'll be seeing, will be lush tobacco, plantations running all the way. The same thing for the potato, research center in Jos. So if you do not understand the role of research, okay, in supporting the front end, this is where I think we're missing it as a government. But I also think that mere policy is not enough, because against policy, you also have what you call programs. And against programs, you have what you call actions. So there has to be a PPA. And if you're not driving this from this point of PPA, where you have policy, you have program, you have action, and you can only drive this when you have a conglomerate, okay, structured like the NNPC is. Then we can begin to talk about, getting our systems right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's such a key topic, and it's such a, I can only imagine, I'm no expert in this area, but the complexities involved in putting policies together that would be able to address this issue is challenging. But as you mentioned earlier on in this conversation, being in a position of attracting talent to our organization, one of the key steps in doing this is making sure that you have the right people in the right places to be able to get this job done. Doctor, what is, from a visionary standpoint, how would you describe, or what specific, what is your vision for looking ahead in terms of the future of food security and agriculture in Nigeria? I want to talk about vision, because I think vision is an important part of.
I want to talk about this vision from a religious perspective, and you're going to allow me to use, the highly respected Islam religion to give you my perspective. There is a ceremony that they call the Ramadan. And most faithfuls in Nigeria want to show obedience to God Almighty by slaughtering an animal, preferably a ram. Doctor, as I speak to you now, Nigeria has at least 140 million Muslims. And at least, let's be a little bit, about at least 60, 70 million of them struggle to perform this highly rated, religious obligation. We do not have in Nigeria, and I stand to be corrected, any farm that has 5,000 of those animals. Yet, in a 2-day period, we slaughter 70 million. Now, I want you to imagine what economy you can create, because in your own part of the world, you don't eat the skin. So most of those animals are skinned. So you can actually, in a year, gather a minimum of 50 million of skins that you can turn into leather. Do you want to imagine what economy you'll be creating, what social, disruption you can, bring to bear, where people do not need to struggle to perform that religious obligation? Now, I go to where I come from, Igbo land. One of the most popular titles for the Igbos who are here is a title they call Ogbuefi. I'm sure you hear Ogbuefi, Ogbuefi. I don't know if you know what it means.
No.
Ogbuefi, I'll tell you today.
Tell me.
And I'm sure to shock you. Ogbuefi means a man who kills cattle, who was killed, probably cattle, for his dead parents. And one of the things you must do if you want to bury your father well is to kill a cow for him, so that when he goes to the grave beyond, he is given the right place as a titled man. And wait for it, Ahmed, if you don't kill that cattle, you cannot go to a burial where another person has killed for his father. They believe that your father will kill you if you eat food there. Are you beginning to get the sense of what I'm trying to look at?
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine if we were able to develop our livestock economy and we were able to support, these two religious obligations that are very dear to us as a country. Okay? Now, one of the best medicinal starch you can get comes from yam. Now, the wide variety has been investigated in Nigeria to be one of the best that can be able to give you pharmaceutical grade starch. Imagine if we had a program in Nigeria today where a minimum of 100, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million tons of those, yams were being produced to support our drug, industry. You're a doctor and you know it. What we have are places where we just, mix drugs. We don't have where we are extracting phytomedications, to be able to produce on a large scale. So the point I'm trying to make is that the opportunities in the agricultural sector, that can support national development and inclusion is so enormous, okay, that in spite of everything that is happening to us as a country, in spite of the so-called, social disorder and hatred amongst ourselves, you'll be very shocked that as I speak to you now, at least 1,000, 2,000 cattle are heading both by foot, by trailer, to the southern part of the country, in spite of all. And I mean, it's not as if they're getting there and they're getting rejected. People are buying it and doing the needful. So if you want to build this social inclusion and you're able to produce this cattle, in an environmental sustainable manner, where you're not clashing with people's other senses of livelihood, what do you think would happen? And this is why I say to you that the greatest challenge we have is that we've not been able to develop a plan, okay, that is backed by program and actions.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great vision. I think on both spectrums. You talked about, use case scenarios in the northern part. You talked about, use case scenarios in the the Igbo land as well. And I'm sure there are other use case scenarios in all parts of Nigeria. But that's part of the challenge, isn't it? When we talk about, in the beginning of this introduction, I talked about the backdrops of insurrection and insurgencies that are contributing to the lack of momentum in building these industries, right? So those are also additional challenges that Nigeria needs to address, because in order to, to have a farm of that number of thousands of cows, in any place needs a number of systems in place to assure the security, of that. And I think it's a tough space. So, these are all great and important things, I think, to continue to consider and to think about as this topic of food insecurity is being discussed. Doctor, it's one other area that we need to touch upon that I don't think would be fair to not touch upon, especially today if we are discussing any topic, is technology.
Yes.
And technology is a key driver of efficiency in many parts of the world, including Nigeria. Can you talk to us more about how you think Nigeria can effectively integrate technologies? I know in our conversation you talked about artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoTs, and other agricultural practices that are happening around the world. Obviously, we have to think about things like accessibility of the technology and also the affordability of those technologies. What impact do you anticipate technology having on the agricultural sector, and how does Nigeria move forward considering the accessibility and affordability of these technologies? I know it's a packed question, but I'm sure
you see, technology is at the heart and soul of development. Now, you can't develop without technology. You can't do anything Technology is the basis of infrastructure development. Technology is the basis of agricultural sustainability practices. It is the basis of, what you might be able to call commercial harvesting, commercial planting, commercial storage, whatever you can talk about. Now, but the challenge, we have in applying technology as a basic instrument is that we've not been able to reverse a lot of the technologies that we wish to use. And so that limits to what extent you can be able to use them. Now, if you remember, part of what made China what it is today is that China started reversing technology. And there's a story that's told about how Chinese, people took 1,000 tractors from Belarus, paid for it, and then after 2 years, they were now selling tractors to Belarus at about 60 or 70% lower than the cost that they bought it from Belarus. Now, that is reverse technology. That is reversing technology. And that is what we've not been able to achieve in Nigeria. Now, there is no way, again, Ahmed, you can talk about agriculture, okay, storage, processing, packaging, at the heart of all this is technology. So it's not a tax question. It's just to say that you can't do anything without technology. Be it soft, okay, be it hard, all right, be it acquired, be it developed. We need, technology if we're going to be making any progress, in either social inclusion as it were, or agricultural development, or the agricultural value process, or even our national development. We are having this conversation today. You are in America, seated pretty well. I don't know where other people have joined from. All of us can see each other. We're hearing each other clearly because of technology. So if any farmer, wanted to also, be part of what happens globally now, that is why it's not so easy to you go to the villages and then cheat them and take their goods and services because they have phones. I mean, you could just go and the man says that Dalabani minute there, Nduba couldn't, and he looks at his as an assessor Ogahaba, Kashi. He's not speaking English. He can speak Yoruba to say to you, but Oga, this price is, you want to take what they're selling in Kaduna for 300 and you want to go and sell it for 2,000. That is the power of technology to make it very elementary. So technology is very central and key, truly.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, I go back to the importance of this topic. I know when you and I were having this conversation, trying to prepare for this, you thought it was a 3-hour session because there's so much to unpack, there's so much to discuss, but we did only have 1 hour. I know a lot of folks have a lot going on in their day, so I was hoping that if anybody, let's take this next few minutes to also have anybody in the audience, if anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to allow you to raise your hands, ask Dr. questions directly. Again, you can also put it in the chat. We would love to hear directly from you. If you don't have any questions, we do hope that you will continue to attend more of these PVT sessions. We will also have access to Dr. Emeka. If you would like to, I'm going to offer up your access, Doctor, to the audience. If folks want to continue this conversation, share some thoughts with you, they can reach you through us as well. And we'll be happy to make that connection.
Thank you. I think what's important, PEEF is become this platform that has linked all of us together. Whatever questions that are directed, so that we can be able to also build the documentation for PEEF. What I wanted us to do was when we agreed, then I can be able to do a paper that PEEF can hold. So if there are any questions, yes, we'll be very glad to take them to PEEF. But if I personal, I'll be very happy, to also, deal with it.
And we do encourage people to join PEEF as well, because you are part of the platform. So the joining PEEF also allows others to directly have conversations in our membership platform on WhatsApp. There are lots of rich and great conversations that touch so many different topics across the spectrum of the broader economy. So it gives folks the opportunity to engage with professionals and leaders in many of these spaces. So once again, if you have not heard of PEEF, or you have heard of PEEF and are looking to join the conversation in different areas, please feel free to join us. Doctor, it looks like we are coming up on time. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with folks today? It sounds like
for me,
in the chat.
Yes, for me, I want to tell everybody that is on this platform that Nigeria is going to be great. But we're not going to be great because we want to be great. We are going to be great because we are going to work to be great. And I tell anybody who bothers to listen, I share my little experience. My wife is from Adamawa State. We've been married for 33 years. Growing up and meeting her in Kano was one of my toughest times, because, I mean, a guy had walked up to my wife one day and said he wouldn't be alive to see an Arena, get married, to a Northern girl, and then, started pounding her. It's a story I don't like to talk about. But instead of that, making me sad, it made me more resolved, to help that young people. And eventually, I started helping a lot of them. In fact, I took one or two of them. I have two sons now who are not my biological children, who are Muslims, have grown up in their parents' houses. Both of them have finished their master's degree. One is getting married next week. If I shared my number, he would tell you, you're talking about my father. He's called me father. He performs his fast in my house. My wife wakes up to cook for him. He takes authority over my own biological children because he's older. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that this is how we can build Nigeria. Okay, we're not going to be building a Nigeria where I am an Igbo man because my mom and my father did what they needed to do as married men, and 9 months after, a baby comes, just like every other person on this platform. So I say to people, I'm an incurable Nigerian. And the more you hate me as believing where I come from, the more I love you. My kids look like their mom, so you can mistake my children, for Northerners. So if you went and killed any of them, you've killed your own, you've killed yourself. So the point I'm trying to make is that the greatest challenge we have as a country that PEEF, must be able to preach is that if we're going to be in Nigeria, we're going to be Nigeria without religion. We're going to be Nigeria without tribe. Okay, we're going to be Nigeria that has creed, and that creed will be, let us help, give a helping hand to that man who needs it, even when he doesn't like you. And I think that is the greatest I want to live here. And that's the principle I live under. Okay, I don't mind it when people don't like me, but I mind it when people allow people to get me angry. I never do that, And at my age now, I can tell you, it's something that has made more friends than it's made foes for me. I'll rest on that. Nigeria will be great again. That's my last word.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And thank you everyone for joining us for today's PEEF virtual talk. If you would like to, again, listen to more of these talks on different topics, or if you would like to join the PEEF organization and also speak on a topic that's of interest to you and that you think can encourage and motivate and inspire others, please feel free to connect with us. With that, it's 1 minute left to